Hello, and welcome to the panel discussion on When the Levee Breaks, Has Crypto Finally Felt the Institutional Embrace? My name is Ethan Pierce, and I will be your moderator today. I am the director of the CryptoAssets Institute. I advise institutions, corporations, and investment funds on issues related to the blockchain economy and crypto assets, so enterprise blockchain, tokenized securities, decentralized finance, all those kind of lovely things. I'm also the host of the Blockchain Economy podcast and newsletter at CryptoAssets.substack.com and on Clubhouse. If you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to post those here in the app, and we will try to get to as many of them as possible. It is my privilege today to be joined by Pierre Gérard, CEO of Scorechain, Alexandra Mikityuk, who is head of blockchain technology at Deutsche Telekom Innovation Labs, Demetrio Migliorati, director of innovation at Italy's Banco Mediolanum. I keep having trouble with that one, but I'll get it right. Pedro Pinto Coelho, chairman and CEO of Portugal's digital bank, Banco BNI Europa, and Yavin, founder and CEO of Cointelligence. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to take a quick minute or two for each of you to introduce yourselves in order for our audience to have a little context on what you do and your interest in institutional adoption of crypto assets. So Pierre, how about we start with you?
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Pierre, I'm CEO of Scorechain. You are a blockchain analytics company based in Luxembourg, and we are operating since 2015. So we provide analytics from public blockchain covering the main blockchains today. And we are used by our customers today for regulation and compliance. So, there's a lot of regulation in the cryptocurrencies area. AML, anti-money laundering, CFT, counterterrorism, and also compliance policy within companies. So we are serving today 100 customers in 30 countries, and we are expanding our offer and providing in the future more analytics to provide new type of information like token monitoring, maybe CBDC monitoring in public blockchain, stuff like that. So thank you.
Excellent. Demetrio?
Hello, everyone. Very good to see you all so passionate about the blockchain world. I work as the head of innovation at Banco Mediolanum, and I'm here just because Banco Mediolanum is part of a large group of banks that adopted the blockchain here in Italy. Actually, the whole banking sector is using blockchain regularly on a daily basis. We are part of this Pintho project that is one of the largest blockchain project in the world. And presently, it's the only full sector community that is working on blockchain worldwide. So we are just an example of a certain kind of level in the adoption of the technology. I'm much more interested to share with you a few news that we have coming from the different working group that are designing some of the use cases of the central bank digital currency. We are designing some of the crypto euro possible use cases. And in these very days, we are not only designing, but implementing them. So I want to share some of this information with you.
Great. Thank you, Demetrio. Alexandra.
Thank you for the invitation. Really happy to see all of you. And also as we all on the panel, very passionate about the topic. And I'm heading the blockchain tech and prod department within Telekom Innovation Laboratories. This is the research and development arm of Deutsche Telekom. We are based in Berlin, and it just happens so that we have lots of protocols that are centered in Berlin that are addressing the topic of infrastructure. So we have, I think, around 120 startups today that are dealing with cryptocurrencies, but also with the infrastructural protocols. And what we've done so far within the lab, so we've been thinking about how to actually enable this bridge of adoption for the enterprise world. Because on one side, we had the access to the startup protocols and learning about the amazing world of consensus and how it all works, but also the access to the customers of Deutsche Telekom and partners and learning about which problems today the industry has and That's how we identified that there is a huge need in IoT systems where there are, large-scale deployments with millions of machines, and how beautiful we can put the blockchain to actually leverage the management, and security for such systems. And so what we've done so far, we've been doing a lot of nice trials and building communities and consortia all over the last, I think, 3.5 years. And basically what we built the blockchain infused infrastructure that enables companies to use different sorts of protocols and embed it very easy into their systems. And we are now currently scheduled to spin this stack out on the market. So really excited to be in the space and to talk to you guys on the topic.
Wonderful. And Pedro, welcome.
Hi, I'm Pedro Pinto Coelho. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be sharing my thoughts with all the experts on the panel. I'm running a Challenger Bank based in Portugal, where we are known for really interact and partner with a number of fintechs. We've already tried to use blockchain by eventually replicating some processes within the bank. And as chairman also of the FinTech and InsurTech Association, I follow the cryptocurrency space and the blockchain application very closely. And we hope that this will just be the beginning of a growing process where the technology will over time mature.
Thank you, Pedro. And last but not least, to one of my favorite resources for following everything that's news and important in this space, please present yourself. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much for the kind words. Thank you for having me on the panel today. So I am Yavin. I'm the founder and CEO of Cointelligence. At Cointelligence, we have been focusing on research and education. We've researched and analyzed more than 550 blockchain and cryptocurrency companies. Some of it was a part of our rating system that we developed. Some of it was a part of research and investigations that we've done in the space. And in early 2019, we decided to shift our focus to education. We established Cointelligence Academy. We've had hundreds of thousands of students. By now, people are very eager to learn about blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And the last thing that we did, which actually I announced today, was the launch of Cointelligence Fund, which is a fund that is going to be focusing on cryptocurrencies, obviously, mainly investing in other funds, but also we're planning to do our own trading, especially everything around DeFi trading. Beside everything that I mentioned, I would just like to note that I think that we are in the best time that we've seen until now for blockchain and cryptocurrencies. We've been through a lot. At least for me, it feels that the last 3 years are equal to 30 years with the changes and the things that have been happening. And thank you again for having me on this panel today.
Thank you, and congratulations on launching the fund. That's awesome. So
thank you.
When we talk about crypto, that can mean many things to different people. So are we talking about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, the larger crypto assets idea, or do we even mean blockchain adoption as a technology, so in the enterprise blockchain space? So I'd like to break down some of those stories on the cryptocurrency side, which I think not only affect, obviously, the investment space and the price of Bitcoin and those kind of things, but I also think it increases customer confidence and institutional confidence and kind of willingness towards even over into the enterprise blockchain space, even though it's not directly related. I'd like to walk through a couple of those stories and then have everybody who wants to chime in, with their perspectives on what these kind of things mean. And I'd like to start with Tesla. So for the audience, if you haven't heard about what's going on with Tesla and Elon Musk and everything to do with Bitcoin, which would be hard because he's been shouting it from everywhere he can. But the Tesla announced, I guess, about 2 weeks ago now that they had made a $1.5 billion investment into Bitcoin as a reserve asset for the company. They also announced that they will be accepting Bitcoin for payments so that you can buy cars, and that they potentially will continue to hold that as an asset instead of converting it to fiat to apply to Tesla's expenses. Who would like to join in and address, this fascinating idea of a large corporate run by currently the world's richest, wealthiest human being, so fervently adopting Bitcoin as an idea and as a financial reality for his company? I see lots of smiles. Maybe Demetrio?
Let's start with a joke. You can buy a Fiat, but you can buy a Tesla. It's
That's a very good Italian joke.
Much better. The definitely is much better. No, I think there is a lot of marketing in the announcement, and the influence that the guy has on the community around the Bitcoin is huge. So is obvious that when Elon Musk says that I love Bitcoin, I put Bitcoin on my profile on Twitter, and all in a sudden I invest what was 1.5 billion, because it was when they designed the operation, but right now it's much more. Today it was worth of more than $50,000 per Bitcoin. So I mean, it's even a little bit unfair for the rest of the industrial community, because they are using the normal way to invest, and that is very different. I mean, it's a risk that they want to run, and let's see what will happen, because it's a little bit unfair for the rest of the community, but it's fun.
I see Pierre shaking his. Shaking his head.
I love it. I love it because it's disrupting, the mindset. So I love it. But I understand even the point from the competitor of Tesla that could be a little bit unfair. I understand that point, but I love it. I love it.
So Pierre, I see some head shaking over there.
Yeah, he's one of the biggest innovators in the world since 20 years. He was at the beginning of PayPal. He created SpaceX, Tesla. So this guy he's always bring a vision of the future, and he's really okay. There's some marketing, but I don't understand the fairness. It's unfair. I guess what is unfair today is when the bank is closing the bank account of a Bitcoin startup company. This is unfair. But just to advertise and to say that you trust something is not unfair at all. It's innovation. And I guess the other companies cannot follow what he's doing. They cannot build the same skills. And but I think it's really innovation. And Tesla is moving towards cryptocurrencies, and because we need a digital currency that can be used online. Basically, cryptocurrencies are the money of the internet. And Tesla is, you can always, today you can buy your Tesla online. You don't go to a car
right.
shop.
I think,
let me
jump in there. Yeah, Demetrio?
Let me be clear, just because I said the word unfair, I want to be absolutely clear what I mean. We are talking about listed companies. So listed companies are working inside the regulated market. If you do whatever kind of operation outside the regulated market, that is something that is under, you should really think about it, because all the other companies are working inside the regulated market. That has some rules and some risks connected to that. If you work outside, you're running risks that are now part of all the portfolio that we have. I mean, whatever kind of fund you have that inside has Tesla now is with a collateral that is Bitcoin.
It's
So
not illegal. It is not an illegal collateral.
It's that is the component that is unfair compared to the behavior of the other companies that are working inside the regulated market. then I can like it because it's very innovative, it's disruptive. I like it intellectually, but from the perspective of a component of the regulated market that is working inside that, this move that is outside can be seen as unfair. Then we have, intellectual discussion on that.
I think that's a very valid point on many perspectives, just from the idea that, for a little bit more context too, so Musk had changed his bio on Twitter to just #Bitcoin. He goes on to Clubhouse, which is the new kind of cool audio first app that is a bunch of innovators and Silicon Valley VC and kind of the influencer kind of crowd right now, and breaks Clubhouse because there's so many people that want to participate in the room and listen to him. He brings up Dogecoin, says that he has to be very careful because when he speaks, he can affect the market. Yep. And then he goes to say that Bitcoin is on the verge of getting broad acceptance in finance. He doesn't necessarily have a strong opinion on other currencies, and that most of his Dogecoin tweets were meant as jokes. But then he says, fate loves irony. And the most entertaining outcome and the most ironic outcome would be that Dogecoin becomes the currency of Earth in the future. And then Dogecoin summarily spikes, potentially also thanks to Wall Street Bets on Reddit and a few others. But he has an effect there. And then he goes on, to continue the discussion about why he thinks Bitcoin is interesting. But what's important here, and this addresses your point about fairness, is the fact that all the while he is at this point now saying very encouraging things about Bitcoin publicly as someone who has just admitted he has influence, they have already invested $1.5 billion in Bitcoin without having told anyone yet. So I agree to your point that is there fairness there, because they have acquired an asset that they are now pumping maybe in some way and increasing the value. Now, is the value going to increase already because of other adoption? And that's our discussion here. That's our discussion. But to that clear point, Tesla is giving a thumbs up and Elon Musk is giving a thumbs up, which causes Bitcoin's price to go up, automatically bringing a tremendous amount of value to their bottom line in the fact that they've invested so much in this as an asset. So I agree with Pierre's point that there is a lot of unfairness elsewhere in the space and a lot of inconsistency in the ways that the financial infrastructure of the world is treating dealing with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. But I could understand why people on the outside might be a little bit frustrated to see somebody put $1.5 billion into Bitcoin. And maybe On has the number off the top of his head or has looked at it, what that $1.5 billion is now worth based on the price they may have purchased it at in mid to late January versus now at 51K. But there's a bump there. So any other thoughts on Tesla?
I think,
sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. I think we can kind of separate, the game rules that, have been used, but they are all out there for everybody. So anybody can do it, right? So we all know how the traction for Bitcoin works. So I'm happy for Elon that he figured out a way how to actually use his words for, to push the value up. I think to the point of unfairness, I see it also in a way that, as Demetrio was saying, we have regulated market, we have unregulated market. And actually it's interesting. Of course, it's unfair for this first mover, companies that are now connected and now have to work with this collateral. However, we need to do the steps. We need to start merging these two things because, it was always separated. And what I especially like, because a lot of companies started already to work with tokens, there was Libra token. But as, with regard to the huge acceptance of Bitcoin itself, if he does this move, not like we create Tesla coin, right? And we do it with other companies, but he really does investment in Bitcoin. And it also creates, I think, in the same amount of time, while of course the value of Bitcoin goes up, etc. That, other companies are thinking, okay, Bitcoin, it's not, a bad thing anymore. So because there is still in the enterprise context, a lot of thinking like this. So this is interesting. And also I find it funny, because Tesla is all for energy, right? And it's all like for green cars. And if we think about how much money, if we buy, Tesla with Bitcoins, right, with 2 Bitcoins, how much money we actually, or how much power we actually have to produce to just do this 2 Bitcoin transactions. It's actually a little bit of a joke, as you know, we then take the car, which is green, and drive a certain amount of kilometers. So it's kind of, I just find it really, really funny to just think about it. I think
the energy conversation is a good one. We can come back to that a bit later. I think there is a valid point there, but I also think that we bring up the energy consumption of digital ledgers and crypto like Bitcoin, but we don't criticize the fact that people are spending all day on Netflix or on Facebook or Amazon or in their Gmail or other places, which is using also an exorbitant amount of cloud computing resources and data center electricity. So I think there's a very valid point to talk about there. Yeah, clearly, what a statement for Tesla to be putting down, and saying that we're willing to take this as payment and hold that as an asset. Pedro, you had something to add.
Yeah, I would say that in relative terms, they have invested 1.5 from 20 billion of cash reserves they have. So it's not, for them in relative terms, it's not such a huge amount. I think obviously Tesla is maybe concerned, as other companies, that the dollars that are sitting on the balance sheet might be worth less tomorrow than they are today, as commodity prices might go up and as the dollar devalues against those commodities that are required to build the batteries, to build the cars. So in a way, I think he's trying to effectively try to create some sort of edge against this potential devaluation of the currency, number one. Number two, accelerating the institutional adoption by forcing potentially regulators to really do something about Bitcoin and not avoid having to deal with it. So I think this is just accelerating the process of governments and regulators trying to say what really will be the ability for companies and financial institutions to actually use Bitcoin, because we know that this has already been adopted by the retail, and now we have to move one step further. So I think this has just accelerated the process, and meanwhile, he probably is getting a nice capital gain, but for a company that currently is sitting at 800 billion of market cap, I think that is just a rounding error, whatever you can get in terms of the Bitcoin appreciation.
But to your point about adoption and continuing down that path for us, PayPal and Visa and MasterCard have all recently announced plans to make Bitcoin and cryptocurrency buying and trading accessible to their networks. So what are your feelings about how that's going to affect adoption of crypto, potentially on a transactional level and not as an asset? Maybe An, do you have something that you'd like to add there?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, with regards to Elon Musk announcement, for me, it's the obvious. I mean, it was so obvious that it will happen. I've been sitting on panels for the last 3 years, more than 3 years now. I remember that I was sitting on a panel about when around the time that Bitcoin crashed, the biggest crash that Bitcoin had. And I remember that one of the main editors of the Financial Times was saying to everyone, that's it, the game is over, you can all go home now, there's not going to be any cryptocurrencies. And I looked at him and I told myself, either he's a lunatic or he is trying to mislead people on purpose for some kind, for any kind of a reason. And it was very strange for me. And going back to Elon Musk did a very sensible, very regular business decision. I mean, it's so obvious to me, because when I was researching with my team for the launch of our new fund, we discovered that if you do not, and what I'm saying right now obviously is not financial advice, I'm just stating this for educational purposes, but if you don't put 1% of your portfolio in Bitcoin, then you're missing something. Then you're doing something wrong, because all the data shows and proves beyond any doubt that you will benefit from it. Now, having said that, obviously everything can crash down at any given time. Bitcoin can crash down, but let's remember one other thing that people are completely forgetting when we're discussing cryptocurrencies. First of all, we've already seen governments fall down and their currencies completely crash. The second thing is that when we're talking about pumping the price, obviously the price will be pumped when somebody like Elon Musk is announcing investing in Bitcoin. But let's remember one thing. Cryptocurrencies, and I'm talking about all of the cryptocurrency industry right now, is nothing compared to what's happening in Wall Street and other exchanges. And it's all in the it's all working with the collaboration with the governments themselves. And we see pumps and dumps on a regular basis. And by the way, that's illegal. When you talk about pump and dump with Bitcoin, don't get me wrong, I hate it, but it's not illegal. Right now, we have illegal activities happening on a daily basis. So when we're talking about fairness, I say let's handle the problems on the mainstream exchanges first before we even discuss Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, which is nothing compared to the problems that we see and the corruption that we see with the mainstream traditional exchanges. And the last point, before I'll say something about what you asked me about PayPal actually, and Visa, I'll say that I don't like the fact that Elon Musk, and that's my personal opinion and personal view, I don't like the joking around regarding Dogecoin. I think that it is I think that it is wrong. But again, that's my personal view. And when you talk to other people and they will tell you, okay, but everybody has freedom of speech and he's entitled to make the jokes around it. I personally don't like it. I wouldn't be doing it myself. But I don't think that the announcement about Bitcoin is a pump and dump scheme. I think that it's completely fine and it's relevant to do it for him to announce this decision. And lastly, I will say about PayPal and Visa, again, it was obvious that it will happen. It got me so upset when they banned cryptocurrencies, because a lot of people don't know that most of the 500 Fortune companies, such as Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and the list goes on and on and on, and it includes Visa and MasterCard and PayPal, they completely banned crypto. We actually had to figure out why they did it, and now it's pretty obvious, because they wanted to get into this market business-wise, and they wanted to be ready for it. It caught them not ready. They weren't ready for cryptocurrencies back then when it started exploding with the ICO craze and with the huge rise of Bitcoin price. I'm talking about the last bull, a huge bull market. And I think that what they did was an obvious business decision, but we do have to remember, and we should not forget, that they caused a lot of damage for the industry with banning cryptocurrencies. And that leads me to the last point, which is about the banking system. And we have to remember one important thing. Right now, even though we are seeing the institutionals joining the game one after the other, and all of them will join the game, even JP Morgan, that announced that Bitcoin is a scam, announced, I saw an interview yesterday with one of the high-level positions saying that they will probably have to not ignore Bitcoin anymore pretty soon. So it makes me laugh after the CEO announced Bitcoin is a scam. So we do have to remember these things, in my opinion, and I hope that things will improve a lot in the upcoming months and the upcoming year, and I think it will. And I think that many of the banks will open up their attitude and change their attitude towards cryptocurrencies, because they will understand now that they have no other option.
Yeah, I think to your point about, that a lot of these institutionals are going to end up having at least something, if they don't have a little bit of something in Bitcoin, that's potentially causing a question. One of the statistics I find that's very interesting that if people are kind of getting into crypto and might not realize, one of the reasons that Bitcoin is discussed so much as potentially a store of value, or at least something that can have such a potentially exponentially, the value of this is going to could be even much, much higher than 50K, is because there's only going to be a maximum of 21 million Bitcoins once we're all done with that process without getting into the process. And we already know that at least 10% of those are probably lost due to wallets being lost or access credential issues and things like that. According to Credit Suisse, there are 50 million millionaires in the world. That means that if every millionaire in the world decided tomorrow that they wanted to own 1 Bitcoin each, they can't. Only half could. So when we talk about scarcity of an asset and we look at things like gold or other things like that, there's definitely an argument there to be made that this is not just about one person having an impact on the value, even if that was a short-term impact with Elon or other things. Even with things like PayPal, Visa, and MasterCard bringing this open, all that's taking us to a place where there's more interest and more access. So I'd like to also, just if anybody has any points around the MicroStrategy issues. MicroStrategy as a company that has now invested, has holdings of $3.6 billion based on the current price of Bitcoin. And they announced yesterday that they're going to be selling $600 million in convertible notes to use to buy Bitcoin. When we see a company like that one has so much of its holdings based in Bitcoin, and two, is potentially a way for companies that don't have the regulatory right to invest directly into crypto to access Bitcoin as an asset by having options in MicroStrategy. Does anybody want to talk about that? We can also move on to other things, but I find it to be just one more of this big piece of, are we having institutional adoption and are we moving in that direction? Seems kind of a big yes, an obvious one, and these are not small examples. Anybody want to quote on MicroStrategy, or we can move on? Move on. Pierre, yes.
Quickly, as you said, sometimes it's quite difficult for a company to invest directly in Bitcoin, and there was a lot of ETF projects that have been rejected by the SEC in the US. So everything that can help companies to invest, to access to this Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency is good for the development of the ecosystem, for sure.
So Pedro, when we talked yesterday on our call, one of the things that you brought up, agreeing with on, but also as a counterpoint, is where we're at with regulatory compliance versus blockage around embracing crypto as an asset, and also on the transactional base. And you brought up a couple different points about that countries could be looking at this as an investment opportunity, but also emerging markets are using it to maybe hedge a hyperinflated currency. And it brings us to this question of, is crypto a real asset that you can use to diversify your assets, or is it just a transaction? So are we talking digital dollars or digital gold?
Exactly. I believe, there is still a lot of ground to be covered regarding this adoption, particularly because the sovereigns in general, they want to control the monetary system, number one. Number two, as you know, the US has the reserve currency of the world. So I think we can all be very excited about Bitcoin, but there is clearly the willingness of these countries to protect their currency to the extent possible. Obviously, we do know it's impossible to ban totally Bitcoin, but they can make your life terribly difficult to try and use a Bitcoin for transactions. So you can make a parallel where we were on the banking system regarding KYC and AML 20 years ago, regarding US dollar and cash transactions, and today, 20 years later, with FACTA and all other similar systems across the world. So there was a huge shift in terms of what now financial institutions have to do in order to guarantee that we protect the institutions from money laundering activities. So Having said that, this means that regulators will take a hard look at Bitcoin. Obviously, we have the advantage of Bitcoin being a digital instrument, and through the blockchain, you actually being able to trace every single transaction done with the Bitcoin as opposed to cash. So that's one advantage. The disadvantage is that obviously you can have exchanges that do not necessarily require KYC. And I would believe over time, these exchanges will be banned from actually operating if they do not comply like other institutions with other currencies with KYC and KYT and AML regulation. Secondly, regarding fiat versus crypto or versus Bitcoin, I believe central banks want to have control over monetary policy. If tomorrow they have no control over the monetary policy because hypothetically everyone adopts Bitcoin, then there will be a problem. It will be more difficult to do the programs that currently a number of governments and central banks are doing in order to recover from a depression or a recession that we are experiencing. So they don't have that instrument. Everybody is happy to use Bitcoin or another instrument as a reserve, but we have to remind ourselves that gold was abandoned as a reserve, and it was unpegged from the dollar to allow the Fed to actually be able to be more for the US dollar to be more elastic.
So on the point of CBDCs, I think the CBDC is a great topic there, and I'd love to hear about. Demetrio mentioned that there's an Italian project. There's also this Spunta digital ledger of 100 banks together. Demetrio, just maybe 2 or 3 minutes to explain kind of why, as a counterpoint then to this idea of the good and the bad of regulatory adoption or not. What's going on in Italy, and what is this project? 2 or 3 minutes, just as a quick high level overview of why things are moving so well and so strongly, and then maybe Alexandra, to that point as well. You mentioned Libra earlier and a few things, but if you want to add anything into that idea of the global digital currency idea or consortium stuff or things like that, but if there's any counterpoint there, Demetrio.
Well, the focus that we placed on the concept of the central bank digital currency is the fact that we actually don't need a digital payment stuff. Because we already have it. We can easily pay digitally whenever we buy a coffee or whatever in every merchant, in every shop. But the real point is that when you design a system that is based on a cryptocurrency, you can add some programmable function to that. So you can really build some programmable money. And this is something that is freshly new in the mindset of the operators, because we can design use cases that by now are impossible with the present kind of money that we have. Just give you a flavor, an example of it. When you have a kid, you normally give them some argent de poche, some money as a little money for him or for her, and you don't want them to spend it in alcohol or maybe in smoke. Today, this is impossible for you. If you prepare a car for them, or if you give cash to them, they can pay in whatever way they want. But you as a father or mother, you want to include in the money that you give some rules that you can spend in something that you don't want, drugs, smoke, or alcohol. Then you can put these rules inside. Let propagate this concept to an higher level. Now, when you get some money from a bank, you pay the risk that this bank is running, and you pay this risk because nobody exactly know how you're going to spend this money. Even if you specify it, there is a part of the customer that are not following the rules. But if you can put some of these rules inside the money that you're receiving, the cost of the risk we are running is decreasing. So you pay less, and we can extend the kind of credit that we can provide because we run less risk. So there are a certain number of situations in which the fact that you are inserting some programmable rules inside the money can ease in the market. Another typical example is a split transaction. You know, when there is two or more person or institution involved, and with one transaction you can pay both. You're giving all of them all the related part of the transaction. So again, there are some interesting use cases we are designing and testing, and at the end of this experimentation, we will see what will happen.
So Alexandra, before we jump to you in just a second, because I want to hear your response to that, and I also want to talk then about moving maybe into the enterprise blockchain side of this discussion. But I know that as the CEO of a risk management platform and very much focused on these things, Pierre has strong opinions on where banks are at and how they are potentially treating startups that have raised crypto in terms of capital or are working in the crypto space. Pierre, thoughts?
Quickly, CBDC are very interesting. In fact, if it's a way to include fiat currencies in the crypto ecosystem and the other way around, to create links between the banking system that is working fine most of the time, I fully agree, and this new innovation coming from blockchain, big blockchain, the DeFi, and so on. But sometimes CBDC are more a clearing system for the banks. So we are reorganizing how the banks are sending funds between them. And what you just said, for me, is very dangerous to be able to control the money. What is the usage of the money? Because today, a lot of banks are preventing their customers to send euro to a crypto exchange because they don't want you to buy Bitcoin. They want to control what you do with the money. And sometimes it's impossible to buy Bitcoin. You have to change the bank account. You have to use another bank account to do that. So again, CBDC are great if it's in the right direction and helping the integration of this new ecosystem, but it could be very dangerous. And you have a lot of customers fighting to get a bank account. And today, don't get me wrong, because I'm providing a solution for regulation. So I'm helping crypto platform, crypto startups to fulfill with regulation requirements, including KYC, KYT, know your transactions. So again, it's really how you design your CBDC, and what is if you go to close the system or to open the system.
Yeah, you should come in Italy. Because we are working every day with blockchain and with cryptocurrency. We have banks providing it.
Yeah, but
okay. Banks providing account, but banks providing access to that, and it's more. More frequent than ever.
Yeah, but just a very short remark. I don't think I have any customer in Italy. You know, I'm providing regulation solution, crypto regulation solution in 30 countries. I don't think I have any customer in Italy, so there's a problem there. Sure.
But let's talk about that.
Sure, because I think it's not a problem, Pierre. I think it's an opportunity. I think you guys are going to have a nice side chat.
We have several institutions already with custody situation and providing access to the market. So it sounds very strange to me. And working in the banks, and I see that I really know this kind of behavior, at least here. So if you suffer of that, come here.
I don't say every country, every bank, some banks. Okay, I'm doing it again. So
yeah, I don't want to rest too long on that subject, because I do think it's subjective to a certain extent, because it is still true. It's true based on where you're at, and it's also no longer true. And we're moving forward in a way where I think that at least you can go somewhere and find countries, find regulatory environments, and find banks that will work with you. And if it doesn't work where you're at, move. And so I do completely agree, Pierre, that there are still difficulties, but I completely do not agree that those difficulties block companies the way they did 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years ago to be able to work in the space. There are too many countries that are being very aggressive. Italy sounds like one of them, but we can talk about Singapore. I honestly think there's an interesting discussion in France to be had, but that's probably not one to get into here. But there's lots of places where that door is open now much wider than it used to be. But Alexandra, we also at the beginning of this panel discussed the fact that when we talk institutional adoption of crypto, that's not just potentially cryptocurrencies, it's also enterprise blockchain. And what does that mean? It means things like supply chain, logistics, replacing the trust authorities in all different levels of governments working together, people interfacing with their governments, with organizations, administrations, things like IBM's food trust and traceability around our food and supply chain space, or trade lens around all the trade that is happening in terms of maritime freight and other things, and how so much of that is being moved towards a blockchain digital ledger space. What are your thoughts on enterprise blockchain adoption and where we're heading in this whole mix of things? It seems like that's happening quickly, and there's a lot of great examples.
Sure, and I think, it's great that we have this very, I would say, multifaceted discussion. And surely, point number one, we all have to work towards the accessibility, right? That normal people can invest in blockchain, companies can invest in blockchain. And we all know that we had a huge problems some years back in the space where it was not so easy for a regular person just to buy Bitcoin. And so I'm really happy that all, these things are happening that we discussed. Also, a lot of custodian services, right? So it's been legislated in Germany this year, in the beginning of this year. So a lot of things happening around this topic, for sure. But I also think that it's really interesting if we think about how blockchain is different, fundamentally different of the IT systems that we have been having before. What I'm really passionate about, if you think about what blockchain actually brings to the table. So on one side, you have something which can store data. On the other side, at the same time, you have something which can do payments. On the other side, you have something which can verify, and you can also execute code. So it's kind of this system that has so many features at the same time. So all the time when we take blockchain into the design of a system and try to formulate what it is it the new Visa? Is it the new, transactional system? Is it the new database? So it's really interesting how all of a sudden you can actually, just by this one piece of tech, address a multitude of use cases. And what is really interesting, when you start talking to customers, it's mind-blowing for them that all of a sudden it's like a magic. You say, well, by the way, you can do microtransactions really cheap, and if you want to actually digitize your contracts, you can do so, and by the way, you can have your own coin, and and it's very interesting. And so in a lot of cases, what we've seen so far, it's overwhelming. If we, when we manage to translate it into the normal terms, like into the use cases, what actually companies can do with the whole thing, right? And then we say, and then, all of a sudden the machine can order the parts, the spare parts by themselves, and it can verify themselves, et cetera, et cetera. So this was very interesting learning that it's actually mind-blowing, and it's really complicated, very complicated to explain, because in a lot of cases, people would think that it's just scam, right? Because it cannot be that the system works this way and it's such flexible. And I would be very, very excited to see a lot of blockchain protocols in the systems of tomorrow, because I think it has a fundamental potential to recreate the internet, to take us away from the platform-based economy, which is amazing, and we have a lot of great platforms, to the completely new level where, as we know, blockchain, we have we need a lot of participants, and I call them collaborative business models, where banks, insurances, telco operators, companies like Tesla can all work together to create use cases for people, for users that are not possible today. Right. So if we come from the traceability topics, right? So there is a lot of need to trace parcels, but we cannot do it today with the systems because it's just too expensive to do it, because the transactions are too expensive, the backends are too expensive.
There's brilliant examples of being able to do that in smaller scales or with certain things like Australia, Singapore has put in a tunnel for doing that, whatever. But if we try and put FedEx on the blockchain, it would not work. To that point, we have 2 minutes left. So speed round, you each get 20 seconds to what are your views on the next 12 months in institutional adoption of crypto, your definition on 20 seconds.
So obviously we're going to see many more companies joining the game. I think that we will see more and more banks being much more crypto friendly. They just don't have any other option. And I think that we will see regulators, officials, stop embarrassing themselves and announcing all kinds of negative announcements regarding Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies in general, because it's so obvious and clear that they are doing it because of a personal agenda, the same agenda that was mentioned before, that every country would like to continue having the power with its own currency. But it's 2021, it's already happening the other way around.
And 20.
Exactly like we've seen. And it's exactly like we've seen with the internet revolution. I was there. I know that I look younger, and but I was there when I was very young age. And it's the same thing with cryptocurrencies. It's inevitable. It will happen. Either you join the game or you just step aside and keep your mouth shut, as they say.
Brilliant. Pierre, your quick thoughts. Where are we going?
Very quick, yeah. No, I fully agree. And what is really important that regulation is really coming now. So we have the MLD5, the fifth directive, the MLD6, we have FETF recommendation, we have the MiCA regulation in Europe. So this is the right timing for financial institutions because they can trust this ecosystem with the regulation.
Brilliant. Thank you. Demetrio, 20 seconds. What you think?
There'll be a lot of new use cases arriving. The community here is very strong, very passionate, and there will be a real adoption of the blockchain as a pattern, more than a cryptocurrency as something new, because that is coming regardless what we are doing.
Brilliant. Pedro, your thoughts?
I would say that as long as, I mean, from a blockchain perspective, I believe obviously adoption will continue. And I think there is a path forward for applications. Regarding crypto, I think we need to still go through another bust, meaning that we are in all-time high in every single market. And I think we need to see that in order to see the sustainability for Bitcoin and for regulators to take a hard look at this. Depending on how they survive in the next liquidity crunch, then I think adoption will be coming mainstream.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pedro. And Alexandra, close this out. What are your thoughts? Where are we going?
I'm really excited about more security because that's what fundamentally, people forget about it. But Bitcoin and blockchain brings so much security into the systems that we even don't think about it today. So it's getting back from clouds and making it more in a peer-to-peer manner, which is more resilient, less hacking. And so I'm really excited to get to the era where we will have less hacks happening all over the place.
Brilliant. Well, you have all been lovely, and thank you so much for your input and for your views and having a great discussion. It was really just wonderful to be here with you. I'd like to welcome